Hi, everyone. Namaste. Good morning, good evening, wherever and whenever you are. Thank you for making time to join me today. My name is Annie Pettit, and I am the Chief Research Officer North America at E2E Research. Today's webinar will be about 25 minutes, and if there are any questions, I'll take those at the end. So let's get started. Now, I suspect many of us have heard the disappointing statistics about the failure rates of new brands and new companies. I've heard that about 1 in 5 new companies fail in the first 2 years, and nearly half fail in the first 5 years. Fortunately, there are some things you can do to increase your chances of success. And of course, one of those things is leveraging market research to build a solid foundation for future growth. Now, I've been part of the market research community for about 20 years, so I'm happy to help you figure out which research techniques you might be able to leverage at each stage of your brand or business growth. Now, let me start by saying nearly every research technique can be helpful at every stage of the startup process. Today, however, I'm going to focus on what is uniquely useful about each research technique at each of the 3 stages of business growth. Specifically, which research techniques offer unique insights during the early problem identification stage when you're still trying to figure out what your product is, what's helpful during the middle validation stage when you've got some sales and some customers, and what's helpful during the long-term scaling up stage when you're trying to expand into new markets and channels. Now, the good thing is there are lots of experts who can guide you along the way. So even if you're not quite sure what to do or what the process is, you'll always have someone you can turn to for a bit of help. To start, I'm going to summarize a few of the methods that researchers use most often. First, there is qualitative research. The defining feature of qualitative research is that the data you work with is words, verbal or written rather than numbers. So, what are people saying? Why are they saying that? How did they say it? What did they do while they were saying it? On the qualitative side of things, the most common options to choose from are individual interviews, focus groups, and online communities. Now, all 3 of those techniques employ expert researchers who have been trained to ask personal questions in ways that make people feel comfortable opening up and sharing unusual, embarrassing, and even some inappropriate things. Really great moderators help people see that their experiences are truly important. Now, I suspect most of us have an idea of what interviews and groups are. In an interview, a trained moderator talks with just 1 or 2 people. In a focus group, they talk with 4 to 10 people at a time. And these discussions are usually 1 to 2 hours long, and you might sit face to face in someone's house or at their work or the gym or at school. Qualitative communities are a bit different. In these cases, the moderator leads a virtual discussion in writing with a much larger group of people, sometimes up to 200 people. Think of it like Reddit or Facebook groups where lots of people come together to chat about a specific topic. Now, with an online community, the moderator guides the topic of discussion over a couple of days, weeks, or even months. And they will offer questions and activities for people to participate in using some specially dedicated software. We can also leverage quantitative research. So this is where you're more focused on the numbers. Questionnaires help you understand how many people said this or would buy this, how often people do things, or what is the size of things, what is the order of things. In many cases, the data sets are really convenient to work with because they fit nicely into Excel spreadsheets. Quantitative analytics are quite different. When it comes to analytics, you need to find a statistician who is skilled with software like SAS, R, Python, or SQL. These folks know how to manipulate massive databases, gigabytes, terabytes, perhaps from purchase data, loyalty data, company data, and they know how to pull out insights that aren't obvious just by looking at a few variables at a time. Lastly, there is secondary or desk research. This is where you collect any information from anywhere that could help you understand your business problem. So it could be census data over the last 10 years, research or opinion papers from different conferences, questionnaire research that ex-colleagues did years ago, or research that someone in a different department did with a different category. Analyzing that data could mean reading hundreds of pages of articles, blog posts, industry reports, and consolidating into key findings. So I'm sure you can see how important each of these methods are. But as I said, I'm going to focus on what is uniquely helpful at each stage of a startup. So let's consider what might be most helpful for someone just getting their business going when you've sprouted a brand new idea. Once you decide to launch a new brand, product, service, company, you need to understand the problem deeply. So, of course, your personal experiences are hugely important. But no matter how careful you are, every person launching a brand, a company, comes from a place of bias. Where you were raised, who raised you, how you were raised, whether you could go to school, what kind of work you could get. All of these things affect how you understand and interpret your business idea. Your instinct that you have an amazing product might be correct, but you truly don't know that until you do your homework. You need to discover what other people think, particularly people who don't have your biases, misconceptions, preconceptions. You need to know what you guessed wrong before you put a lot of work and money into the wrong place. Now, some of the ways you'll address your knowledge gaps and mistakes and find out if people would be willing to put their money into your wallet is by addressing these kinds of research problems. What does the current market look like in terms of existing products, potential buyers, potential purchasing outlets? What problems do potential customers experience? What are their needs and wants? What are their pain points? Who are your potential competitors? Why do people choose them? How do people hear about them? What do people know about them? You need to deeply understand who your potential customers are and how your product could be uniquely able to solve their problem. And you need this information before you put a lot of resources into production. If it's helpful, you're welcome to screen cap this page. I won't go over it in any detail, but it's an outline of some research problems you might be facing at the conceptualization stage. These are things to think about and make sure you have good answers to while you're still in the early phases of building your product. You don't need to memorize these. Whoever's helping you with your research will know how to get you to the right place. All right, so while you're still in the conceptualization phase, qualitative research is massively important. You need to deeply understand how people feel about the problem, what their pains and frustrations are, what makes them happy and joyful. And you need to experience the problem from beginning to end with fresh eyes, from someone else's point of view, someone whose life experiences are completely different than your own. This is why I love individual interviews at this stage. You'll also hear them referred to as IDIs, in-depth interviews. Now, the purpose of interviews is to give people a place where they feel comfortable and safe expressing all of their emotions in their full context to see which part of the human experience causes different emotions. Chances are there is vastly more to the problem you're addressing, and you'll discover new ideas that you hadn't thought of before. Being able to personally observe people is key to individual interviews, particularly with products or services that are complicated to use. Uh, Interviews give you the opportunity to observe people trying to use those products. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you can even get permission to visit people in their home and see who, how, where they are currently trying to resolve the problem. Now, you do have to remember, like other research techniques, there are drawbacks to individual interviews. In this case, the drawback is your sample size is very small. You might only speak with 5 to 30 people, and it's impossible to get a representative group with only 30 people. Like, yes, you can include 15 men and 15 women, but true intersectionality is impossible. You can't create a group of 30 people who reflect every combination of age, gender, ethnicity, religion, income, education. So you will not come away from interviews knowing which feature is more important for which type of person. But that's not the purpose of interviews at this stage. For now, in the early stage of conceptualization, your main goal is to deeply understand the problem as experienced by a range of people. Now, during the conceptualization stage, you'll also find that qualitative focus groups are particularly helpful. You could think of groups as just a quicker way to do a lot of in-person interviews, but that's not the reality of this method. Moderators build rapport with an individual person much differently than they do with a larger group of people. It works different and is perceived quite different by the participants. What I love the most about groups is observing interactions among people. So, where does a conversation start? Where does it go? How does a conversation fall off the tracks? What ideas cause the most distraction and disagreement? What ideas are most convincing? What kinds of people are best able to convince others? You can use this knowledge to plan your product design, figure out how to phrase your messaging, figure out where you need to advertise. Now, just like interviews, focus groups are not intended to be representative samples of your target audience. You cannot learn incidence rates, frequencies, or counts from focus groups. There's just too few people for this to be possible. But running a focus group helps you understand the entirety, the depth and breadth of a variety of problem areas before you put a lot of money into building out the wrong thing. As part of truly understanding people, you have to truly understand perceptions of your prototype. And that's where central location testing, CLTs, come into play. By bringing people to a location to test or try or eat your product, you can learn a lot of things. For example, is your package prototype functional? Can kids open it? Should kids be able to open it? Can people who have arthritis open it? If you're offering food, of course, do people like it? But are they eating it in the way you thought they would eat it? If it's a personal care product, are they applying it in the way you thought they would apply it? What are they doing with the prototype that you didn't expect or that defeats the purpose of your design? So get your prototype into the hands of real people who've never seen it before and let them manipulate it however they wish. So watch for things they're doing wrong because your wrong is their right. Um, as I said, now is the time to identify big mistakes before you put a lot of money into large scale production. And don't be held back by the type of product. You really can test basically anything with anyone, anywhere, even if you live in the middle of nowhere. Shopping malls are equipped with rooms that can be rented, so you can ship your food or personal care products to test. There are facilities fully dedicated to research where you can rent deep fryers or temporarily install your own washing machines. So no matter how unusual you think your product is, a research company can get it into the hands of a wide range of people all across the country, all around the world, really, to test it under the right conditions. The last type of research I'll mention for the conceptualization phase is secondary research. At this stage, it's imperative to know the state of the market. You need to know what all the competitive products are, regardless of their intended purpose. So remember, your competitors are broad. Toyota doesn't compete just with GM and Ford. Toyota competes with motorcycles, public transit, and even mobility aids like walkers. Uh, Along the same lines, ice cream doesn't only compete with gelato. Ice cream competes with freezies or popsicles, apples, and even meat patties that you grab at the counter in the subway station. With secondary research, you can learn what is available in different markets, particularly those that might soon expand into your market. You'll learn the potential size of your market. How many people have the ailment you're targeting? How many people fall into the income bracket that would be necessary to purchase your product? How many people live in the region where your product could be used? You need to know what you're up against so you can plan and know how to position yourself in relation to your competitors. After you've sailed through the conceptualization phase, you've got a nice little seedling ready to grow. You have a foundation of knowledge about your category, your product, and now you need to know how to support it, how to feed it, what nutrients to give it so that you can grow it into something much bigger. At the growth stage, you need a lot of research to ensure your initial investment doesn't get wasted. So this is not the time to settle in comfortably. Every other brand, every other startup is trying to make sure their product is better than yours. You need to remain competitive. And these are a few of the problems that will be on your mind. As before, this is another page you can screen cap if you wish. It's a list of research problems and questions that you'll need to consider when you're in the growth stage of your business. Again, it's a lot of research problems, but you don't have to memorize this. There will always be a researcher who can help you figure out which problems are appropriate for the stage of your brand or your company. The interesting thing at this point is that many of the questions you need to answer can benefit from one particular technique, and that is questionnaires. Now, questionnaires are probably the most common tool people use. They are the Swiss Army knife in the research world. No matter the problem, people will try to answer it with a questionnaire, even if it's not the right tool. Well, now is the right time where it does make sense to pull out questionnaires. There are two key reasons for using questionnaires. Now, the first has to do with the sample size and the people you'll get to participate in your survey. Most surveys are answered by at least 300 people, and sometimes as many as 1,000 people. This large sample size means you can make sure that the group of people looks really similar to your target audience. You can include the right number of men and women, old and young people, as well as the right representation from various ethnicities, income levels, education types, and so on. When you design this group of people properly, you can make reliable predictions about who wants or uses your product, the percentage of people who will buy your product, and even the profit you might earn in different markets. Large, well-designed surveys let you count people and dollars much more accurately. The second thing questionnaires let you do is understand the relative order of things. So, for example, which product is most preferred? Which feature is most desired? Is one group twice as large as another group? Are certain things equally important or vastly more important? This is how you'll figure out which features you should start working on and which features can wait for version 3, 4, or 5. Online communities are also fantastic during the validation phase. They are the perfect way to witness the full cycle of your product. Over the course of a couple days or a couple weeks, people can share their experiences from beginning to end. Find out how they heard about your product. Ask them to share pictures of the product in the store. Take pictures of the product in their home. You can ask for pictures on day 1, 3, 10, and 25 of using the product. You can see where it's being kept. You can see if it's kept on the counter or transferred to a pretty container that they pop on a shelf somewhere. You can also listen to how everyone communicates with each other. What are they learning from each other? What opinions do they change because of what other people said? What conversations are people really interested in? And which conversations do they ignore? Which information channels are they eager to try out for themselves? This is your opportunity to get a first-hand look at how people talk about your product and your category as a living, breathing product in their lives. Individual interviews are once again very important during the growth stage. This is a really good opportunity for you to speak one-to-one with people who've tried your product and then have remained loyal or decide to switch to something else. You can have them explain why they initially chose your product and why they continued to use it or why they switched. So you can really listen to them and tease out their barriers, their pain points for repurchase, and what their unmet and met needs were. So you can figure out how they resolve their problems. If you get their consent, their fully informed consent, you can actually use video clips from the interviews to demonstrate to your key stakeholders why you need to do certain things with your products. We all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and in this case, a video clip can turn a no from a CEO or an investor into a yes. So congratulations on growing your business this far. You're ready to scale up. After building a business that's been in the market for a couple of years, you've created a solid foundation of knowledge. You know who your target market is. You know where your best markets are. You know what your best advertising and marketing channels are. You're accumulating sales data, and you might even have some nice marketing data. Now you want to become a major player with national or even global recognition. So you're ready to be the sun that blocks out competing plants. So how do you make that happen? It starts, as always, by understanding your research needs because new needs are always arising. And these are just a few of the research questions you'll be facing. At the scaling stage, we see a big need for analytics, a research tool that takes advantage of the database you've been building since you started your business. As before, you're welcome to screen cap this slide too. It's a quick list of some questions you'll want to address once you're ready to scale. The best part about being in business for a while is the data you've collected over that time. You've got transactional sales data, maybe you have regional data or data from different seasons of the year. You can conduct some extremely detailed number crunching to understand which combinations of products or features sell best. And not simply that the red one sells best, and not even that the red one sells best in Iowa. Your data will be able to tell you that the red one sells best in Tennessee when it has features A and B, but it sells best in Utah when it has features A and C. Really detailed stuff. It can help you figure out which combinations of features are more suitable as you target a wealthier audience, or a more conservative audience, or an immigrant audience. Analytics will help you uncover finely tuned insights about your target audience's purchase behavior. Insights that are far more complicated than what an Excel sheet can do. And once again, we're back to questionnaires, but this time from a different angle. Now we want to think about quantitative tracking. With your products solidly on the market, you need to understand the broader market and your competitors so you'll be prepared to address any challenges before they catch you off guard. You'll need to conduct some ongoing tracking studies to stay in tune with how your competitors are changing and growing. You need to know how the perceptions your target audience has about your competitors is changing and improving. When you know what people think about your brand and your competitive brands on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis, you can anticipate market changes, predict future needs, and plan to pivot rather than be caught off guard. And tracking is what will help you stay ahead of the game, identify where you're falling short, and help you identify where you need to shore up your business. So that was a lot of research problems in a very short time. We've seen how useful different types of research can be when you're in the early stages of figuring out your product, when you're growing your business, and when you're scaling up to crowd out the competition. But do remember what I've shared here is not carved in stone. Most types of research really are useful at all stages of the game. These ideas are just some good places to get you started when you aren't quite sure where to begin. So I'm hoping you feel a bit more at ease about jumping into research to help build your brand. And as I mentioned before, there are lots of experts who can guide you along the way if you're still not quite sure what you need to do. So before I answer a couple of questions that came in, let me just say thank you and Danyawad for listening. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me, and I'd be more than happy to help you figure out how you can build your business, your brand, from a foundation of valid and reliable data. So I did see a couple questions come in. Let me take a look through those. Uh, The first one asks, how do you test frozen food like ice cream? What if you're not in store yet, so you can't send out coupons for trial? Thank you. That's a great question. Some products, like prepackaged snacks, cookies, rice mixes, you can just mail those sorts of things to people across the country, regardless of where they live. The good thing is, even with frozen food, you can pack ice cream or milk or frozen juice with dry ice so that it's still cold or frozen when it arrives at their house. Um, you can also ship a frozen product to a central location where people can join a research group to test it. It really doesn't matter if something is frozen or boiling hot or breakable. There is a way to test essentially any product from coast to coast. So don't worry about temperature or fragility of products when it comes to testing them. Okay, the other question that came in, uh, I'm really good with Excel, so why would I need someone else to do analytics for me? Thank you. That's another great question. I totally see your point. I'm a big fan of Excel myself, so I know how flexible it is for analyzing data. But there does come a point where Excel is just no longer efficient. I hope your business has been so successful that you have gigabytes, terabytes of sales data. And if that's the case, the sheer size of an Excel data file would make using it just almost impossible. But beyond that, the benefit of enlisting a statistician is that they can tease out relationships among many variables. They can do things like basket analysis, where they literally look at combinations of products that are purchased together and they can identify trigger products, indicator products, those individual products that predict whether someone will be a loyal, long-term, or high-value customer, or whether that person's ready to take off in a couple of weeks. So with these advanced tools, they allow you to uncover complex, insightful findings that just can't be seen with more basic statistical tools. So that looks like all of the questions for today. Um, Once again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found some useful tidbits in there. So I will leave you with a goodbye and al yada.